Asian myself, but I do consider myself quite American. And I started making illustrations that had references to Japanese culture in it. And Japanese culture, because I took 2 years of Japanese language in my high school days before I got kicked out. And her father is Japanese, and we were together for 15 years. So, you know, he's much older than me. Probably shouldn't have been dating him when I was. But through this work, I didn't have an intention. I know quite a bit about Japanese culture and Japanese language. I've been exposed to it. I watch a lot of anime, and I read a lot of manga. And so I started exploring that in my work. And I started noticing that my daughter would come up to me, and at that time, she was younger than she is now. She's almost 11 now, so maybe about 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And she would come up and be like, "Mommy, what's that? Who is that? What does it say? What does that mean? Who is she?" And I would be like, okay, there's an opportunity here to teach her more about her heritage and culture in a way that isn't me forcing it on her. It's her naturally being inquisitive, wanting to know more about this art, but also more about her heritage. So these works right here, they are called Kinsuki Ramen Girls. So if you're not familiar with Kinsuki, it's a Japanese form of repairing pottery where they utilize gold to fill the cracks and repair the pottery to a whole piece. But instead of hiding the cracks, you know, they let them show because the piece is more beautiful for what it's been through. And so outside of that concept, I also wanted to incorporate my deep love for food. I love noodles, you know? And I think that there's something deeper there, though, right? Because you have this female figure, and she's bathing in noodles. Is the noodle bowl larger than life? And she's a regular size? Is she small in a regular bowl? Or like, but really, I was talking about the idea of the female being fetishized and as something to be consumed together with the Kinsuki as a altogether concept. So that work is really kind of where I started to get a lot of attention. You know, I don't know why, but I think people really enjoyed just the visual aspect of it without even knowing these deeper concepts behind the work. And I continued to explore this body of work. And at this point, probably it was late 2017, so not that long ago. And they're quite simple in nature, but I really enjoyed them. So then, this leads me up to kind of my first big group exhibition here in Jacksonville with a gallery known as the Space Gallery, which no longer exists, but it was in the downtown core. And it's kind of a funny story. So one of the artists, there were 4 artists altogether in the exhibition. It was myself, Dustin Harewood, Hiromi Manihan, and Christy Chandler. So the 4 of us had this show, but initially it was going to be the 3 of them. And one of them had told me about the show coming up, and I said, gosh, they're having a show that has some kind of context around Japanese culture, so I wonder if they would consider my work. And so the next time there was an Every Single Artist Lounge through the Cultural Council, I went to it, and one of the gallery owners was there, and I went up to the gallery owner and I said, you know, I heard that you're having an exhibition with Japanese context. I'm kind of offended that you didn't ask me to be involved. And he laughed. And he said, well, how about this? Send me some of your work in your portfolio. We'll look it over and I'll share it with the artists and ultimately allow them to decide whether or not you can be in the show. And I said, okay. And immediately I went home and sent him images of my work. And he ended up saying yes, together with everybody else. And at this point, I hadn't made any large-scale works. Everything was small, like 11 by 14 was the largest size I had made at that point. But the wall that they were giving me to display work, I said, well, it's time to rise to the occasion and make work that's larger. And I changed my substrate from being works on paper to being works on birchwood. And so this body of work kind of played with the ramen girl idea, but also I incorporated more like this idea of old Japanese text and how they had these stories of gods and goddesses, and so it was like my modern interpretation of those gods, but as like female figures. So here's some intimate views. There's the ramen again, ramen on the brain. Yeah, and the Kinsuki is incorporated in new ways. And that's me with my daughter next to me, and my mother's on the far right, my sister is on the left, and that's her daughter in the middle as well. So it was kind of a moment of, you know, showing my mom that I'm not that angsty teenager who got kicked out of high school. And also I wanted to kind of empower my daughter, you know, to say, hey, you know, you can be an artist, you can follow your dreams, whatever they may be, and hopefully find happiness, you know. So here are the ramen girls again. Oh, now I'm hungry. So what happened from that was actually Folio saw my work there, and they had a Bite by Bite edition coming up. I guess they do it annually, and they kind of share about the local food businesses in the city, and they asked if they could use my work on the front page of the Folio. And I was like, you know, I'm not gonna say no. That's okay. I don't mind. You know, like... Yeah, and then, so going back, actually, I'm gonna flip back a couple of images, bear with me. So before this, there was this image. So this image, I had posted on Instagram, because again, that's my main form of social media. That's how I'm connecting with my viewers. And one person saw this, and they messaged me, and they said, hey, I really love this piece. Can I buy it from you? And I said, okay, I don't mind. And they said, well, I'm out of town, so when I get back, let's meet up, and I'd love to buy it from you. So I met them up when they got back in town. And they purchased this piece, and at the time, I didn't know how to bring an art piece to someone buying a piece from me. So I just brought it in the only thing I had, which was like a book that is a portfolio with plastic pages kind of thing. And so it had other works in there, not just this one. And so they flipped through it, and they were like, wow, we love this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and we want to buy them all. And I was like, I won't say no to that either. And they said, well, how long have you been doing this? And I said, not very long at all. And they said, okay, well, what do you have any plans? Are you gonna have an exhibition or a show or something? And I said, yes. It's a good idea. Someone had approached me for an exhibition, and they said, you know, we own a coffee shop, and you're welcome to display work here. And I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. And the people who bought this piece owned Space 42. So it's next to Cork, the art studios over there, and it's a ginormous warehouse. they're like, well, why don't you just have the show here? And I was like, because this is a huge space. Like, I don't have the work to put in here. And they're like, okay, well, we'll set a date for a year from buying this piece. And maybe that's enough time for you to make work to fill the space and come up with a good concept around the show. And I was like, oh my gosh, I do not have the money for this. Okay. So I applied for a grant. It was my first grant that I ever applied for. I had no idea about the process. It's like, even though I went to my undergrad for photography, which is technically what is that called? A well-rounded education that incorporated multiple mediums. There were no classes around business. There were no classes around applying for grants and calls to artists and how to write a CV and all of these things that are quite important when it comes to applying for things. And so I went to the University of YouTube and Google, and I found the answer. And I wasn't sure if it was the right answer, but I applied, and I ended up winning the grant for art ventures here in Jacksonville through the Community Foundation. And I had my first solo exhibition at Space 42 in September of 2018. And the idea behind it was that you're walking through my dreams. So this kind of doorway is an entryway into my subconscious, and that these curtains of sorts are kind of ebbing and flowing much in the way that our subconscious might in our dream world. And the images on the wall were, somehow part of that dream world for me, bits and pieces that I might recall, or something of that nature. And we did something different, which is having QR codes instead of regular labels. So that was kind of like a step, we had to have instructions to let everybody know how you can obtain that information. We also had paper ones, but it really created a clean, overall display. I really wanted people to focus less on reading and more on experiencing. Like, that was my focus. So these are just images from that exhibition. It's quite a large space. I think I ended up having 36 pieces in the show. Most of them smaller and intimate, but some of them trying new things. There's some wood again. And yeah, I'm so grateful, because what I realized is the more and more I have opportunities and I step through the door, right? More doors open from there. And I didn't know that would happen, I thought, I open the door and I go in and then that's it, I walk back out. But that's never happened. And in a way, I have no complaints, So one of the things that came from that solo exhibition was a solo exhibition at Museum of Science and History. So Paul Boussier is a main coordinator there. He's now since retired, but he said, well, Elena, there is a month I'm thinking about that maybe you want to do an exhibition. I said, okay, when is that, Paul? And he said, it's AAPI History Month. And I was like, what does AIPA mean? And he says, it's Asian American Pacific Islander Month. And I said, oh my gosh, I hadn't heard of it. Now I'm embarrassed. But I'm honored that you would offer it to me, And so I had an exhibition there, and together the museum had received a grant to also allow for some kind of education funding. So I wanted to create a workshop that was family friendly, knowing that the Museum of Science and History is a family oriented space. I wanted it to be open to all ages. And so it ran the gamut, you know? You had younger, older families, single people, I mean, like, just people of all walks of life. And yeah, it was interesting. Mukashi Banashi means Japanese folktales. So everything is kind of inspired by Japanese folktales, which, you know, a lot of my dreams happen to have that show up in it. And then my artwork. So here I am, explaining something. Who knows what? Something deep, having to do with process, you know? So I went from making works on paper to making works on birchwood to making more and more mixed media art. And I couldn't have predicted that would happen, but it did. And so this piece, I had a really wonderful opportunity to dig through the Museum of Science and History's archives. So there was like this whole section of like Japanese kimonos and historical items that had just been sitting and hadn't been opened since the early 80s. Just been sitting there. And so I got to sift through it with one of the people who manages that with gloves and like, you know, AC and I don't know, this was pre-COVID, I think. But it was great, and this piece was inspired by these Japanese dolls, and yeah, my work started to shift. Another thing that came out of that solo exhibition is Pilot Pen is a big pen company, and apparently their headquarters is here in Jacksonville, which I didn't know, but somebody came to the exhibition from that company, and they saw my work and they loved it, and they reached out and they ended up asking me if I wouldn't mind to use some of their new artist materials that haven't come out in America yet but will soon. And I also said, I don't mind. And and I said, well, what's the purpose? And they said, well, we'd like to create a new form of advertising. So instead of saying, here's Pilot Pen and here's all of this cool new materials, we want to let an artist utilize those materials in a way that's meaningful to them and document this process and show those finalized works in a magazine called 66 Magazine. I said, I never heard of it. And they said, well, it's a magazine based out of Chicago, and they distribute to lots of different places, mostly art fairs. And they have a subscription base, and some of it's architecture and design, and also art. So it kind of like bridges the gap between a couple of different mediums in art. And so I made a bunch of work, and had a photographer come and photograph the process that the magazine hired, and ultimately Pilot Pen was very happy. These are some of their materials, which crossed over between like sumi ink to oil pastels to colored pencils to watercolor pens. Like, it really ran the gamut. And I had fun. And really, I was inspired by the colors of those materials and the way that they named them. So, for example, one of the colors was momiji, and momiji is kind of a deep, deep red, but it's like not saying deep, deep red, it's saying the color of leaves in the fall. So it's almost kind of poetic, you know? I felt inspired by that. So every piece that I created for Pilot Pen and this magazine spread was inspired by their materials. And as you can see, they've gotten more complex now. Now I have all of this collage aspect and different things happening. Yeah. And I thought, what's gonna happen with these, you know? Like, it's great that they go to magazine, but maybe I should have an exhibition. You know, I made quite a bit of pieces. So I've had a close relationship with Crane Ramen, mostly because I'm a regular customer and I like to eat there. But also, they ended up buying prints of all of those ramen pieces that I made in the past to display in the back area of their shop. And I came to them and I said, hey, you know, like, I have all of these art pieces. You don't have any art in the front of your business. How do you feel about doing a short exhibition? And they were like, that sounds awesome, but instead of it being a short exhibition, let's also make it an event where it's like a catered event. It's a private, like, Monday they're closed. And so they wanted to do like a food pairing that the chef could be inspired by my artwork to make like small dishes to serve throughout the evening. So it ended up being a whole thing. And then Folio was like, we want to put you on the front again. And I was like, I don't mind. And then, you know, we move forward in time, and having a daughter myself, I really feel connected to the youth and inspiring them to reach for the things that they want to do in their lives as they grow older. And so Don't Miss a Beat is an organization here in Jacksonville who serves the underserved community with amazing art program. I mean, just amazing. And they said, well, will you come and do a workshop with our kids? And I said, I'd love to. So I did, and it was so much fun. Like, they said that the kids don't always listen when it's the same people there every day, but when a visitor comes in, they get excited. And I don't always dress like this. Usually I'm more casual. So I wear like Adidas or like whatever. And young kids were like, oh my gosh, she's so cool. Look at her shoes. And I was like, thanks, but what about my art, you know? So I had a chance to share with them my process, and it was a workshop like to not, initially I thought self-portraits would be a great idea, but then I realized not everybody wants to do that. And I was like, you know, why don't you just make what you want to make, but still try to use the process so that at least we're somewhere in the same vein of expression here, because that's the workshop. I don't want to put boundaries on you, but like just a little bit. So this is one of the works that was created. Oh my gosh, so sweet. Oh, I love them so much. She did not want to do collage. She was like, nope, I just want to do illustration. And I said, you know, that's okay. You do that. But do you know what collage is? You know, like I tried to like talk to her about it. And this is a young man who is an artist and student over at Douglas Anderson, and he didn't need any real instruction at all. Like, he already knew what he wanted to do. And so I think working with different age groups and then simultaneously like working with artists who already have something in mind, I found it so beautiful and inspiring for me. Like, I thought maybe I would inspire them, but actually they inspired me so much more. And then I guess there's this company called Stage Fund. So they were created because, you know, a lot of the theater professionals were not getting paid what they deserve in the community to show up and perform on a regular basis, whether that's like the back of the house or the front of the house performers. And so there's a nonprofit organization called Stage Fund, and they worked together with Brune Garcia, the advertising agency, and Manifest Distillery to create a series of bottles inspired by Commedia dell'arte from the Italian period of theater, which I did not know very much about, but they assigned me and every artist involved in this project a character, kind of like I don't know, your base characters in most plays. And I got the lover, Innamorata, and I said, you know, I might know something about that. And everyone had to wear a mask. So the idea was that there's a mask, right, in Commedia dell'arte, and that's how you typify which character they are embodying. And and on the other side, you could see the identity of the person. So it was a really fun project. It's a 5-bottle set, and the proceeds, or at least a portion of the proceeds, goes towards Stage Fund, supporting performing artists here in Jacksonville. And then, this last year, in about February, I did something which I had only dabbled in very lightly, because a friend of mine, her name is Nicole Holderbaum. She's an amazing artist, muralist, and she does a lot of community work, and she does like workshops with kids and mural stuff with kids. She now lives in Miami, but she was here in Jacksonville for quite some time, and she got commissioned to head up a project at the old Town and Country Shopping Plaza off of Arlington Expressway. And she called me and she said, hey, we have this project and I think you would be really great for it. And I said, okay, what is it? And she said, it's a mural. And I was like, girl, I'm not ready for that. And she said, yes, you are. And I said, okay. And then she told me how big the wall was. And it's 30 feet tall, and each panel is about 24 feet wide. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not ready for that. And she said, yes, you are. And I said, okay, I guess I am. So the Florida Times-Union wrote up a piece about this mural project. There's Nico in the bottom left and many other amazing artists in the community. And Bob Self took this picture. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but such an amazing person at the Times-Union, amazing photographer. And we ended up doing a mural. And it was kind of emotional because, you know, I remember the Town and Country Plaza not so long ago, but you know, I moved here in '98, and when I was young and doing things I shouldn't be doing, I went to this club that was in that shopping plaza called Leopard Lounge and Plush. So, and now there really isn't a whole lot happening, but there are still businesses, and as well as a church inside of that plaza. But there's a lot of memories there. My boyfriend's family is from the Arlington area, so I was hanging out there a lot. And it just felt kind of nostalgic, and it was a really fun project. I would do it again. I wanted to do something that represented Jacksonville, you know? So of course I put a helmet, because we have the Jaguars. Mm-hmm. I know they're like have huge winning streak, but we still love them. We still love them. We still support them. It's a hard job. And I just thought about this rough teenage girl finding herself in the rough streets of Arlington, and growing up in Jacksonville, and what it means to be part of the community here.